Good morning, everybody. So good to see you, and I'm thrilled that I have electricity. So, not that I didn't expect it, but everyone was like warning me, oh, these big blizzards could potentially turn the power out. And yes, that is always a possibility, but I don't like to think that way. But I know if you have dealt with snowstorms and no electricity, that is a PTSD, so I get it. So, anyways, yeah, this last couple weeks have been amazing, guys. Okay, with the help of all of you, I mean, we're uncovering so many different, I don't say cover. We're peeling back the layers of programming. I mean, that's what we are. And we are learning very basic concepts that once you know these concepts, especially around antibodies, then as soon as you start studying the different handicaps and the diseases that are out there, it starts to click. It starts to make sense. Hey, Lasha. And so just let's just a real quick refresher so we can come from, the same place. The three things that kill a person is an overabundance of candida, an overabundance of hormones, or an imbalance of hormones, and then too many antibodies. And when you have too many antibodies, hey, Catherine, it means that your body sustained a mutation from that pathogen. Because we're looking at coming from a very pristine world where the negative elements are not kicked up, the body already knows exactly what it needs, and it doesn't have to go through a learning process. Okay, so if you don't ever sustain any poisons, then you will never ever have to build antibodies ever. But we don't live in that world, but pretend that we do live in that world, that you already were born with knowledge. You already know what it is that you have to eat. Hey, Mai Huang, you already know that you need salt, which is electrolytes. You already know you need, when you look at the elemental composition of the human body, you already know that you need all the first 9 elements, and you also know that you need trace minerals. But how do you determine which of those minerals and which of those elements that are predominant and less predominant? How do you determine that? How do you know how much? Well, you already know that you need the right bacteria, because you know that you also have yeast in your body that gets overfed, so it needs to have a certain bacteria that counters it. So you already have the knowledge of fermentation and of nutrients and of how to purge and make sure that you get rid of the poop. So you already know this. Everything that has made you guys stay alive, not what causes your degradation, but whatever makes you stay alive, you already know it. So you're born knowing this, and then you're just growing up, or your mother is teaching you this, and you're in a pristine environment, no technology, no nothing. It's super pristine. So guess what? You're never ever going to be creating antibodies. But now let's say this. Let's say something happens in the environment somewhere over there across the way, and some elements get kicked up, and that human in that little community that knows everything right off the bat, they get exposed to, let's say, there was a volcano that happened over there. So the volcano is bringing up all this silica, okay, all this ash. And so that human that was never ever exposed to any negative element that threw the balance off its body now gets exposed to a negative element, which is too much silica, too much ash. So the body goes into an immune response. And then the human is like, oh, I got to get away from this area. Oh my gosh, this ash and this thing is negatively affecting me. Its instinct is to leave the area. So it leaves that volcanic region, or that area where that volcano was spewing its ash. They go back to their encampment. and they eat their vegetables and whatever it is that they're eating at the time. And then, they feel the pain. They're not taking anything like any negative element. They're not taking things. No one has experimented with anything to take anything. So they just keep eating the food, and the body repairs itself because it has everything that it needs. And it goes along its merry way. Okay? That's in a perfect world. So that's why you have to imagine a perfect world. And then you work your way through a relatively imperfect world. So in a perfect world, there is no upset of homeostasis. You already know what keeps the body going. Is these specific things that somebody gave, because how did this community that it lives in a perfect world know that it needs to ferment cabbage and grow cabbage, and it needs to mine salt, and it needs clean water, or it needs water? Something told them, but that doesn't matter how they knew. Gabrielle, too much. You got, Gabrielle, no questions. You need to read my book. It's all about balance. Everything was about balance. You take too much of any one element. If you take too much water, what does it do? It destroys you. You take too much silica, it destroys you. You take too much mercury, it destroys you. The body has a balance. Okay, Gabriella? It has a balance. That's why everybody has to read my book. No questions, especially if you're new, and you're new. Okay, you're new, which means that you need to go read my book and understand the body creates that balance based upon the ingredients. Okay, so this is where I'm going to look. This is where I'm going to juxtaposition that perfect world. Go to jillyjuice.com. Okay, Gabriella Leon. So in a perfect world, they have all the ingredients of their body as well as what they need to eat to keep their composition going. Because the outcome is life. Now, the outcome is not death. Now you go into the world of right now, the matrix. Okay, and we have people given the same elements. Like Gabriella has all a bunch of silica because she thinks that silica is the foundation of the body, the foundation element. So Gabriella has all this silica and maybe some other elements. And she's totally not really in tune. So I'm going to use you as an example. So thank you. So we have this perfect person like Jillian, who lives in this perfect world where there's no fluctuating elements. Everything is wonderful. She keeps her body alive. She looks great and everything. And then there's Gabriella, who has all the same ingredients, right? Like Jillian has the same ingredients, but Jillian knows what to do because she was taught chemistry. She was taught biochemistry. She was taught the immune system and how it works. She was taught to release all the poop. She was taught she needs water and salt and nutrition and all of that. But Gabriella was not taught that. She was taught certain things. So Jillian, and I make this analogy about birthday cakes. So Jillian was given these ingredients and made a perfect birthday cake. It tasted good, it smelled good, it rose in the oven, it never flattened, and it was beautiful. And then Gabriella had the same ingredients, but didn't know anything about the chemistry of how to use the ingredients. So Gabriella was taking silica and putting too much silica in the cake batter, and then was adding other things that she thought that someone told her to do, that it was a good thing. And then she made this cake, and somehow the cake was all messed up. It was flat. It didn't taste good. It looked dead. Or if it looked okay for a minute and then it just wilted away in a day later. While Jillian's cake was beautiful, even when it was cut, it stayed good and refreshed for a day or so, 2 days. But Gabriella's cake was just messed up. Well, this is an analogy that you can have the same ingredients because all humans are the same, but what you do with those ingredients is determining the outcome. And so Gabriella's misunderstanding of how to utilize the ingredients has caused and perpetuated death in her world. And then all that knowledge that she learned from a centralized system passed that knowledge to other people. And so the outcome is always the same. All of Gabriella's world, as well as her community and world that she lives in, now has a crappy cake to deal with. While Jillian's world, away from all the society, away from all this stuff, living in a perfect world, right? She's able to have a cake that stands and tastes good for centuries. And she doesn't need to reproduce either. Because the cake. So, anyways, that's the analogy. Okay? So, even though, yes, silica is a needed nutrient, you can't determine how much. But you know there's silica in your food supply. There is silica in cabbage. There's silica. There's all these trace minerals. This is where you have to go to my book and understand the mineral and the nutrient content in your food supply, in the vegetables, in already established proof of what the human body needs when it comes to eating certain foods and what they deem was healthy. Obviously, they put vegetables in the forward food groups, at least back in the 80s, as a needed type of food group. Okay, so there's a reason behind it, or we'd be dead. Okay, so now you take, okay, so the extreme is our end, right? Here in the matrix where we're all dying and mutated and everything else. And the other extreme is the perfect world where there's no upset of homeostasis, no negative elements being kicked up, so the body doesn't have to go into an immune response. Because every time the body has to go into an immune response or have immunity is because there are pathogens present. And you can't help when you live in a society that has people doing different stuff and elements get kicked up, because now we're not going to talk about contaminants. We're not talking about pollution. We're not going to go into the politicized words. We're going to talk about elements, because elements get kicked up regardless, especially when you live in a very active society that has a lot of technology, a lot of industry, and a lot of different belief systems with different laws. Actually, no, the same laws, but people think they're different. So now we have people that are being exposed to negative elements. The body goes into immune response. No different if you're exposed to a person that has some kind of infectious disease, where do they get that infectious disease? Well, when you trace that infectious disease back to somewhere, really, a coal miner who has never had a disease ever in their life. So you take somebody that's in Jillian's perfect community and you put them into an environment where there's all these negative elements, like a volcano or like coal. And if you look at the composition of coal, you can see what that breakdown is as far as the chemical. And they're exposed to coal dust all the time. And maybe they're, and they're not, let's say they're not doing the jelly juice and they're just kind of eating nuts and berries. Okay, so that's just for that example. So then they start developing mutations from that negative element. It starts mutating and bacteria starts developing in their lungs. And now they have tuberculosis and they're coughing and they're wheezing and they're sniffling and everything is, they feel run down. And then that bacteria is contagious. And so they live in a family that, let's say they're not in Jillian's perfect world, but they've never been exposed to tuberculosis. And their immune system has never encountered. So even if they do have a strong immune system, but they've never, so forget it. Hold on, let me go back. So they have a strong immune system or a strong body, but they were never exposed to this pathogen, this contagion, this bacteria. And so the family gets exposed to this guy's tuberculosis because he just was exposed to a negative element. That's what it is. That's what I have to remember. See, I'm even programmed. So let me go back real quick again. So you take someone in a perfect world, put them in a negative elemental environment like coal mining. The exposure to those negative elements, the constant coal dust, then goes and attacks, it's a negative element, it attacks their lungs. They develop an infection, and then it starts running down, it starts wreaking havoc, creating mutations. They're coughing because the body goes into an immune response where it coughs, trying to get rid of it. But yet, when you try to get rid of something, when you're coughing or spitting up sputum and all that, then the people around you And they may have a very strong immune, not to say strong immune system, they may have a very strong body. They're eating the right foods, they look beautiful, they're wonderful, they're young, they haven't aged at all, and then they get exposed to their dad who was in the coal mines for a long time. Guess what? They'll undergo a mutation because they were exposed to that infectious disease. Now, that's fine. So now they have an antibody that is a direct correlation to that exposure to that coal mine. And that antibody is a direct exposure to whatever combination of pathogens that patient zero developed from that exposure to the negative elements. So then the family gets it, they all get sick, but they're eating the right foods, they're not taking any medicines, they're not doing anything homeopathic, and they're doing jelly juice or whatever. And then they all are better after maybe less than a month. And then, okay, so perfect. So there you go. That's how the body is supposed to work. But that's in a perfect world. If they happen, okay, and let's take it back to that volcano real quick, because I'm thinking of these scenarios right now as we speak, just for any future speeches that I ever do. But let's say that person in that community goes to that volcano, stays in that volcano, they go through an immune response. The body starts doing some weird things, and it's trying to get rid of that pathogen, which created an upset of homeostasis in the biochemistry, and the body's trying to get rid of it, okay, through mucus. And so them being exposed to that volcano, then they go back to the village, and then that pathogen, that bacteria from the exposure to that volcano, it infects the whole village. Okay, that's okay. The whole village is doing jelly juice. So it's a new pathogen, a new negative element, because they just took, so this guy was in a negative area. So he took negative elements in that area from that volcano, since it was an upset of the elements of the earth. And he essentially brought that volcano and how it affected him into the village. No different than taking that volcano that's over there and taking it to the village. So that way everybody got exposed to what that volcano did to him. And so he was like a representation of that volcano, taking it into the village. So the whole village gets upset of homeostasis. They get exposed to the pathogen. They all get sick, but no big deal, because that's how the body's supposed to work. When it gets exposed to a negative element, it goes into an immune response. But that is the way the body protects itself. It creates antibodies, and then those antibodies go after that pathogen, and then the body pushes it out. So they're all spitting up stuff, pooping everywhere. They're taking jelly juice too, because that's what they do, because they know about that. That's a good, hold on. So they know about that. And then, you know, after a month, everybody is better. They're taking the jelly juice because they've been taking jelly juice because they're all 100% perfect. They're all looking 30 years old. So no matter what, you take a perfect society and you give them the right, and you give them the right, they have a composition, and then there's a composition of the human body, which is universal. Then you have ingredients for the right combination of nutrients, electrolytes, and minerals, and all of that. And you know what that is. And then you combine the two, and you understand how the body works when you combine the right ingredients for life, when you give it to your body, and then the right composition, your body, how it's going to respond to those ingredients. Then no matter what, even if you get exposed to a different pathogen, the body will go into an immune response, and then it will recover from that immune response, that immunity, that natural immunity. But you have to, you know, you must know that no matter what, any conglomeration of negative elements is going to impact a body, and that's why people get sick. So any of you that get sick right off the bat, everything was beautiful. You're never really sick. You don't remember. You didn't have a cold as a kid, nothing. Which then is autoimmunity, too many natural killer cells. So that's why we'll go to that direction in a minute. But that's essentially how the human body works. Is when you're not manipulating it to where it's overactive immune system, but when you do get exposed to a potential upset of the elements where you're getting a bunch of negative elements, the body will just do what it needs to do and then go back to then where it was before. As it would go back to what it was originally intended. Because that sickness, him being exposed to the coal mine or to the volcano, was, and then how his body responded, was a mutation. That was a mutation. Now, whether you see that mutation physically is a different story. It depends on the severity and where it's impacting. You may, and let's say, but here's the thing. If the body doesn't repair itself, then you're carrying the mutation still. It's not been fixed. So unaddressed mutations is going to be passed down because guess what? Since you're already sustaining a mutation, if that's your mentality and you're not doing jelly juice or any other type of strategic nutrition, and you sustain that one mutation and you don't fix it, let's say the person gets off the jelly juice and they go run away from the village and they want to go live near the volcano, or they want to go live somewhere else and they forgot everything, or who knows. I mean, there's a reason why, and I wouldn't know what this situation would be, but this is just for example. Then they sustain that mutation. They think everything is great because remember, homeostasis sets in once you sustain and undergone a mutation. And then they decide to go, and then they go find another world that has donuts and candies and cakes. And it's like, oh, yay. And the yeast is like, oh, yay. And so they live that lifestyle. And so that mutation from that volcano or from that coal mine stays with them. And then they're exposed to now industry with a lot more negative elements fluctuating, a lot more people with other issues fluctuating. So they're taking on more pathogens. He undergoes another mutation. He gets sick. He's feeling fatigued. He's feeling this. He's feeling that. But then, the body heals, not say heals, but it goes into another level of homeostasis, of a mutated homeostasis. So at first he was up here. And as soon as he got exposed to negative elements, he started lowering, and he doesn't fix it. He goes down this ladder of mutations, and that's degradation. Now, if he were to stay up here continuously, even being exposed to negative elements, it's because he gave his body the right nutrition. But as you keep sustaining mutations and you don't fix them, you start degrading. And then that's how it triggers the hormones. Then the hormones start coming to surface, trying to protect the body, whether it's fight or flight, oxytocin, depression, something, okay? And so then they start procreating. So he has all these mutations. He gets exposed to all these different mutations because he left his perfect society wanting to go out and see the world. I mean, I can even make this into an Amish situation, right? So he goes out and see the world, and then now he's living a life of, okay, I'm going to procreate. So they have a baby. That baby has now a mutation, developmental situation, a handicap. Where do they base this upon? Oh, because it was based upon the mutation sustained in the coal mine as well as the volcano, and it was left unchecked. So that's how mutations work. That's how antibodies work. And too many antibodies creates a domino effect. Immunity, whatever it is, whatever you're trying to capture, whatever immunity you're trying to bring in purposely or unintentionally, or just because you have no choice, that does mutate the body. Little by it chips away at the body's structure. I mean, and one day I'm going to have a specific scenario that I will be better at delivering. But right now I'm developing these scenarios. So that way when I actually deliver this specific analogy, it'll make sense to people. Okay? So I'm in the practice mode right now, trying to figure out how best can I get this scenario across in like 5 words or less, right? Which is not possible. It's more than 5 words. So that is essentially what goes on in our society. And there's different levels of mutations in our society based upon how many antibodies a person has in their body. So then I was researching the trisomy 21 or Down syndrome, and there are specific surface marker antigen that are present in Down syndrome people. If you really want to know what kind of antibodies that are in your kid, go get them a titer test. And I can tell you those antibodies have contributed to your children's handicaps, mutations. But you'll never ever hear the industry talk about that because they look at the context of immunity as protection. No, it's not protection. You already sustained the mutation. And then there was a blurb in that one article about the Down syndrome and antibodies and antigen and surface marker this and that, saying that when they were giving them a vaccine, like a Down syndrome vaccine, it wasn't very active. The vaccine wasn't active. I'll tell you why. Why some people don't react to vaccines while others do. Because they already sustained that mutation. That pathogen has already been introduced to the body. Okay, so that's why when you have two kids with the same vaccine and one will have a reaction, an immune response, and the other one doesn't, the one that doesn't is already mutated. Yeah, they may look great, but you don't know since the antibody's swimming around, it may not impact their external structure right off the bat. But as they grow and the body starts developing, you're going to start seeing difficulties, seeing behavioral differences in other children. That's why there's so much diversity. Okay? So over time, when you have too many antibodies in your body, that equals the death process. And the type of antibodies in your body, based on also what you inherited from your parents, because your parents have antibodies from their exposures to whatever was in the environment or to the vaccines, was left unchecked. And those mutations were passed on to the child. And then the child gets all these new and different vaccines, undergoes another set of mutations, especially if they get an immune response. Anytime you get sick is an introduction to a pathogen. And then those with cancer, disease, and chronic illness and constant pain, when you're in constant pain, when you are in pain, it means your body's trying to heal. But when you have like inflammation, you have redness, you have headaches, you have, that's pain. Redness is the body trying to clear out pathogens. It's trying to go through its filtration process, even as weak as the system is. But when you feel a new pain, anything that's new that you feel is the body trying to heal. Now, and this is where the pain and this is where how do you determine the difference when your body undergoes a new mutation and when the body is trying to heal? That's the differentiation we need to figure out. So if I were to get a vaccine today and I start feeling all this pain, like this new pain, and I see it's a direct correlation to this vaccine, I know my body is undergoing a mutation. Okay. And then let's say I go out there in the environment and there's a new pathogen circulating in a vaccine and I'm around people who are newly vaccinated and I come down with something. That's a new mutation that I just sustained. But here's the thing. Then your body starts feeling tired. Or let's say down the road. Everything is great. You may get a cold once in a while, but you don't think anything of it because that really is a mutation, but it's a very benign mutation. It's accepted. But let's say over time, your arm is feeling weak. You have eczema, so you have this constant rash coming to surface, psoriasis. You have this constant pain, the constant feeling of unwell, anxiety. Just look at all the symptoms out there that people sustain on a chronic level. That is a body sustaining a mutation and it's trying to correct itself. That's what pain is a body trying to correct itself from that constant pathogen, which is that antibody. It's like playing, what is that called when it's not ping pong ball. when you pull this thing and then the little thing hits everything. Okay, when you put, it's like it's a game that you play in that's some arcade. Pinball. Okay, those antibodies, when you're feeling chronic pain, is the body playing pinball. And every single time the antibody hits a specific point in your body, you feel the pain. So those antibodies are wreaking havoc and destroying you. That's what chronic pain is. That's what cancer, disease, and chronic illness is too many antibodies that over time has taken your system down. And then your body is trying to correct itself, but then you don't understand what that means. So then what people do, they take poisons that induce natural killer cells to go kill that stuff. We call them antibiotics, or we call them homeopathic remedies. Hold on. And what happens is it creates natural killer cells. And then it also induces hormones, oxytocin, to kind of make it not as bad. And then in the meantime, you're candida. So then when you keep sustaining, because those natural killer cells keep mutating the body, because when you take in a poison, you keep destroying your body. It's another mutation. Every single time you take in cannabis that induces a hormone reaction, which is pleasure, every single time you take in an antibiotic, whether it's dandelion root, kombucha, apple cider vinegar, pot, any remedy, you are sustaining another mutation because you're poisoning the body. Your body goes into an immune response. And what happens is it poisons. So there's an anesthetizing effect because you induced a hormone. But then that wears off over time. The body adapts to it and then the pain returns. And so you're seeing people like Rick Simpson or anyone else that practices these types of methods slowly degrading the system. So this is where it says this is where I come, where last night I had to block somebody last night. And I didn't want to block him, but I had to. Because I know I keep triggering people around the whole thing with the God thing and not even the God thing. That really isn't what I trigger. I trigger the indefinite life, the possible immortality, not asexuality, where the body goes back to a juvenile state, forgetting everything and then relearning everything over and over again. That's what happens in our society when it comes to reproduction, is that, but it takes two people. It's not one person. It's not parthenogenesis. Okay, so I talk about immortality in the context of the cells regenerating based upon the right chemistry that you're taking into your body that matches and aligns with the biochemistry. So right now we have two different laws. Now that I've introduced this possibility of immortality in the context of right nutrition, now we're working with two different laws. We have a law that people say that if God wills it, you will die. Like you have no choice in the matter. Okay? And so people are meant to die. They're not meant to be in this meat suit forever. So that's a law somebody put out there, that people are meant to die. Okay. That's not my law. That's your law. Does it mean that it's a law? Yeah, it's a law that if you take in a certain type of elements, because it's a natural, death is a natural process, provided that, based upon your knowledge as a human on what it is that you're doing that will then elicit that specific trajectory. But now you have two choices. You're not subject to only that law. There's also the law of life. So if you don't take care of yourself, there's a law of death. Okay. If you take care of yourself, there is a law of life. Now, which one do people right now adopt for the most part in the matrix? They adopt the law of death because they haven't figured out how to take care of themselves. And so the body is going to go into its natural response when you don't take care of yourself and degrade. Now, that's a concept that's very difficult for a lot of people, especially those that are religious. They want to play the semantics game. Well, if God wills it, if God wills me to be alive, then I will be alive. And but or we're meant to live forever, but not in this meat suit. Who determined that? So here's the thing. Once we agree upon the law, then I don't care what story you have around it. Because there's another person who says, yes, I believe that people should be immortal. God never intended people to die. Death is a consequence. And she's saying there's a little more to that. And I'm like, I don't even care about the stories of why a person should live. It doesn't even matter. If we agree upon that everyone should live indefinitely, then you can have any story you want around why people should live indefinitely. It doesn't matter. If the foundation is the same, that we believe in indefinite life for humans, at least for humans, then it doesn't matter what the reasons are. No different than when people believe in death, right? And you're seeing in the Matrix, in the allopathic and the holistic, they all believe in death. But they say they believe in life. Oh yeah, this is take this pill, powder, supplement to prolong your life. But they still believe in death as the end result. So in reality, they're pretending that they believe in life, but in reality, they really believe in death. So in the Matrix, they all agree. Those that say that people should die, they already agree that death should happen. Oh, but they don't want to die right then and there. But what is time? Everything there's no yesterday, there's no tomorrow, there's only today. So if you believe that people should die, then why wouldn't you just die today if you believe people should die? If that's the way that God intended, why not die today? Oh, but no, but they believe in life because they don't want to die today. So we have people that say they believe in life, but their actions really say they believe in death. And that's because they're not taking care of themselves, because their body and their mind are not aligned. That's the biggest thing, is the body, mind, and the spirit are not aligned at all. And this is why you have this crazy perspective on life and the human body. And so that gentleman that I had to take off my Facebook, and I didn't want to because I kept warning him, if you don't believe in what I believe, then just don't comment. You don't need to keep refuting, even in a nice, polite way, because nice, polite ways, I know that's deceptive. How much he's doing the juice, I have no idea. But I deleted him off my Facebook because I was just tired of having to deal with having to play that game. But, he believed that, the human body should die, even though the spirit lives on, but the human body should die. So this is then when I was looking at, I was watching Ghost Adventures last night. But I watched it for a couple hours and I went to bed because I was tired. I was up at 4 yesterday. So I went through, what is it? I listened to one of the stories, and he was saying that the reason why these ghosts appear, whatever you want to call them, I don't care. Okay, I don't care what you guys call them, but it's still energy. And what do we attribute energy? What have we attributed energy, within the Julie Juice protocol? It's hormones. Because you can say, oh, good energy, bad energy. Good energy, when you just stay in the good energy, really you're playing with the oxytocin. You're always being lovey and love, 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 everybody love, positive, positive, positive. That's tapping into your oxytocin. And that creates an imbalance. And you don't have boundaries because you're always coming from love. You're not coming from, hey, hold on a second. What is this love thing? Oh yeah, it's procreation. It's something else, right? So the energy that these spirits leave behind is based upon a restless hormonal situation. And then here in life, right now, we have people that are the walking dead that are full of hormones. All this energy, and it's restless energy, it's restless hormones. They're still on a death trajectory. I mean, when you look at their body and they say, oh, I'm pro-life, but their cells are degrading. They are the walking dead, okay? I hate to say it, especially when they're looping, but that's what happens. And so that's restless energy. That's hormones. And when you look at, and I say as above, so below, that makes sense because you can have a restless hormonal person in the dead and a restless hormonal person living. So what would then calm their hormones down? When they're at peace. What does being at peace mean? When the hormones finally relax. Now, what would put a spirit at peace? I have no idea. That's where I'm not sure. Where they say where their murder gets solved and somebody comes in and says, "Okay, spirit, or what?" I mean, that's the analogy that I'm putting because it makes sense. Though, the dead person is not getting nutrition to put them at peace, but something, maybe another hormone that the person who is talking to them, the medium that's talking to them, gives them a dose of oxytocin or something, maybe. And that's why that spirit relaxes or goes away to the other side. Okay? When a person is put at peace here, it could be a drug. So yeah, maybe that's what it is that the mediums that put these spirits at peace in a haunted house just gives them a dose of oxytocin. Okay. So they just drug that spirit. And then here on Earth, when you get put into a relaxed mode, you're given cannabis or something else, or you actually get healthy. Here on Earth, you have a choice. When you're dead, you have no other choice but to then get anesthetized by another hormone. And that would make sense why Zach Bagans or any of those other mediums would put restless spirits at bay or at peace because they're all playing with each other's hormones. And that's where I saw that, why it is that some people are a bit more conscious of the dead is because of the hormones that are active and they're able to, I guess, communicate with each other. Because it is energy, no different than a dog recognizing, because dogs are instinctual. So when you're all hyped up and enjoyable and everything else, the dog's all hyped up. And when you're calm, the dog is calm. Dogs mirror what they see based upon your hormones. So that would make sense. And why dogs can sense spirits, because they can sense a hormonal presence, even without the meat suit. So, do I actually know if we're intended to be in a meat suit for the rest of our lives? And why did Moses or Noah die at 900? I have no idea. But here's the thing. Are we intended to die on the other side? And I don't want to take any absolutes on either way, but I do need to when it comes to life. Because how do I know that I'm living is when not just my spirit, but I know my body is living. If I have the option to reverse all of my issues, then why wouldn't my body be able to then be aligned with my mind? When somebody is dead, their body and their mind and their spirit are not aligned. Now it's just the spirit, and they don't have any body or mind. It's just a spirit. It's like a snapshot. And that's it. But no, here on earth, it's about body and mind and spirit aligned. Okay, so that's why I take the absolute of pro-life, not this superficial pro-life in the allopathic holistic world. Well, you're dying and you're going fast right now, but we can give you things to kind of slow it down, but we still believe that you should die. No. So if we can agree on the law that humans, at least for now, right now, it's too early to say that all animals should live. Yes, animals should live, but some people still believe in eating meat, eating chicken, eating whatever. And even though I could probably live without that, my husband can't. The reason, now I could say no chicken and all that, but I do eat chicken every so often. What does that mean at the cellular level? Who knows? It could be my environment. If I were in a different environment and a different influence, I wouldn't be eating chickens maybe. It's all about your influences in life, right? I mean, there is obviously self discipline, but then if you have to intellectualize and say that I shouldn't eat meat because it's wrong, not just gravitate not towards eating meat, then it's inauthentic. You're trying to intellectualize and politicize something. So whatever the case may be, I'm not there yet to where it's all of life except for plant life needs to be honored. There's ways in which you kill something that's honorable, but is killing honorable at all? But I mean, as far as animals for food, but that's a little bit too far in the future. Let's just look at human life and then we'll branch out from there if we need to. So if we all can agree upon the laws of the humans, that humans need to live indefinitely, then I don't care what story you have. You can have a Jehovah's Witness story, you can have a Christian story, you can have atheist story, whatever story you want. As long as we all agree upon that life for humans should be indefinite, which means that if you believe in death, then you're going to believe in all the different mutations. And that's where right now our society is. They are normalizing the different mutations because they still believe in death. Until you actually believe in indefinite life, you're going to allow all these different mutations in humanity to sustain. And that's where, the understanding of just the basic science of antibodies, the 3 things that kill you, antibodies, too much candida cancer, and then a hormonal imbalance. You have to understand that. And then you start looking. Now, once you understand those 3 things, then you start looking at all the different diseases. You have things that say that are permanent, like Down syndrome, progeria, or dwarfism. And then you start making the connections. And then you realize that they're deficient in this nutrient, they're deficient in that, and they have this antibody, and they have the prevalence of that antibody. And oh, I'm going to do a titer test to see they're B positive. Well, what type of surface marker antigen is in B positive? Oh my God, I'm B positive. I just got a titer test and I have 50 things that I'm positive for. Holy shit. This is what's causing all of my mutations and my chronic illness. Now, you can still have the antibody, but it won't be so prevalent. So when you are chronically sick, go see and there has to be a way to count the numbers of how many antibodies of one specific pathogen you were exposed to that caused the mutation, which then caused your chronic illness. So if you have Lyme disease, see if you can get a list of what you're positive for, and then also the antibody count. There has to be an antibody count to tell you what the most prevalent antibodies of that pathogen are, and then you can directly correlate that to your disease. There's got to be. Some of you who are lab scientists that are out there, there's got to be a way to do that, because that shows a pattern. That is data that you can use to understand. And then when you do finally, so let's say you do jelly juice and you start seeing the reverse of those mutations from those pathogens that turn into antibodies. Then you do another titer test, and then you see that, okay, you used to have a 50 count of this SV40. And now you do another titer test, and now your antibody count for the SV40 is like 2 or 3. So it's not like you disappeared the antibody, because no, that's part of you now. It's part of your immune system, your first line of defense. It protects you, right? Not really, but you get exposed to it again, it doesn't matter. Your body is not going to go through another mutation because you already sustained the mutation. So no, it is a protection in a way, so that way when you get re-exposed to it, it's not going to mutate you again. But let's say even the one slight variation of that same bacteria, you're going to get an immune response. And what goes on right now is we have some of the same pathogens with slight variations that will manifest in the same looking disease, which is why you see 2 dwarfs in the same family, because there's a slight variation in that pathogen that caused that developmental disability. Okay, so that's why it's important that you guys understand titer tests. And then if there is a price to tell you how many antibodies for each pathogen, get it, because you already know you guys are sick. So get the data to then corroborate what I'm saying, because you already know that antibodies, too many of them are not good. Why is it? Because you wouldn't mix the A, B, and O blood type together, because the O negative person would die. But then if you have too many, you get too many vaccines, right? If a baby gets too many vaccines, they go into inflammation. When a kid gets a measles vaccine and they get the measles, and they play it off like, oh, it's natural. Well, yeah, it's natural, but you expose a kid to a mutation, And they say, well, getting the vaccine is not going to be as bad as if you got it naturally in a measles party. But it's all relative to what you bring to the table. You can't compare one kid that may receive the measles and died from it because they didn't die from the measles. They already had other mutations. He brought to the table a very weakened body, and that measles pathogen antibody was the last straw that broke the camel's back. So it's also what you bring to the table will determine how you're going to react to all of these different negative elements, pathogens that then in turn turn into antibodies. Okay, so that's something just to think about. So on my last post that I did this morning, I was looking at the trisomy and the Down syndrome and then the surface marker antigen and how that Down syndrome patient reacted to the vaccines and what they didn't react to, what they did react to. And then you start reading from a very scientific level because you understand what antibodies do. And when someone doesn't react to a vaccine, it means they're already mutated. That antibody is already in the body. So that's why you're not seeing inflammation. Okay. Let's see. The thing with the missing link, that's the weirdest thing. I saw CNN put that article about, the missing, is it Homo habilis or one, I don't even remember what it was. But I'm like, they've been doing experiments, on the population, and I'm sure there's some secret lab that is grafting animal and humans together and trying to create some other type of organism. And I'm sure you've seen it in the conspiracy community, what they've done, like, what is it? That one island that's out there in New York. I forget, but we may be seeing some weird creatures wash up on the shore. We're seeing some weird mutations in the population. And where does that all come from? Well, obviously, if we understand that humans are exactly the same, and we're not saying that we have aliens on this earth, then you know that this person has some kind of mutation that's causing an anomaly in their overall structure that makes them look different than the average person. So then where does this missing link come from? Monkeys are their own species. There may be similarities in the different, genuses and genotypes and phenotypes and all these. I mean, you can go to science and figure out all that stuff, the different species and phylums and this and that. If they can say that we're part monkey and we evolved from monkeys, which there is no evolution, there's mutations, but we're not evolving from some animal. Now that comes down to belief system, but it also comes down to science. When you take nutrition and you already have a bunch of mutations, okay, even mild ones, like you've seen my facial structure change. Well, you introduce a pathogen or a DNA to some organism, and the original design is like this human, and then you give them some animal DNA. It's going to mutate their body, and it may manifest in an obvious facial type of structure, and you see then this, and it may come out in offspring, because offspring are based upon a mutated body. That's how reproduction happens, is mutations happen in the population because of elements. And the reason why we reproduce is to carry the species forward so there's no extinction. So that's why you may not see the mutation happen right off the bat if somebody does get injected with some animal DNA. And then the offspring, relative to where it hit, is going to sustain that mutation from what the parent sustained in their lifetime, or maybe generations back, because grandparents have died because they have mutations, but they had kids, and every single generation sustains mutations, and that's why reproduction happens. So why couldn't it be possible that maybe these monkeys were just a very mutated human? Maybe, and I know I say, oh my God, the conspiracy community, don't, but it's not even about the conspiracy. It's just about questioning everything and applying possible scenarios and considering it. Not saying that it's actually happened, not saying that there's a conspiracy to say that we evolved from monkeys, but considering that maybe somebody was playing with DNA and was doing experiments. Maybe they wanted to create a story. People create stories all the time. I created stories to figure out or to explain why it is I was messed up, because it helps people feel comfortable with who they are. If they can find a story that makes sense, whatever it is, okay, and it's like an answer to them, then it allowed me, and I made up a story about being adopted or something, I forget exactly any story that I made up, but people do make up stories about why they are who they are, or why this happened, or why their parents did this, or why they were given up for adoption. Maybe they that their parents were princes and princesses, or they were kings and queens. They had too many kids, so they gave this up. Maybe I'm a prince. People make up stories all the time about why they are in a situation that they're not happy with. So, and that's okay, because it gave them some peace, and so that way they can move on with their life to do what they need to do. Well, no different than what we put out there in the science world. If people don't know something, guess what? They make up a story about it, and then they find all the evidence to support it. Because you can find evidence to say that Jilly is killing everybody, right? Based upon focusing and twisting the perceptions that we're only taking salt and that's it. We're not doing water, lactobacillus, or nutrients or anything. No, they're all focused on the salt out there in the troll world. But that's them, the trolls, making up stories to justify their belief system, even though the story doesn't really hold much water in reality. The logic doesn't hold anything there. But that's what makes them feel comfortable to justify their bullying tactics, because we're trying to destroy someone by saving somebody. That's what I'm saying about the misalignment of the body, mind, and spirit and life. In the allopathic and the holistic world, they're saying that it's okay to die in the end, but we do believe in life, and that's how they justify killing or maiming people, because it justifies that, okay, we're protecting life, but in the end, you're all going to die anyway, so it doesn't even matter. But it does matter, because that's how the stories, and that's how all of the different diversity and the entertainment and the justification, the politics, that's how all that gets justified. So why can't we consider that maybe those monkeys are just a human that was mutated? It's worth a consideration. Okay, because people do want to be comfortable and trying to find an answer, even if it doesn't logically fit in the actual science. Because let's say you give the monkey strategic nutrition, or give that Homo habilis strategic nutrition, which we can't go back in time, so we're only relying on what somebody has written. That's why I say to you guys, don't die, okay? Stay alive, do the Jilly Juice, stay alive, because that way you're always going to have the first-hand knowledge of Jilly Juice. You pass away, somebody gets a hold of this knowledge and they twist it. They're like, oh yeah, this person created this, this Jilly Juice, but they modify it. They modify the Jilly Juice. They modify the ingredients, they modify the outcome, modify everything. And they put it out there. And so then, it gets twisted up, because you're not getting the first-hand knowledge from the actual person that's done this. So that's why anyone that dies, any information you received from people that were dead, you can't trust it. So if you received information from somebody else, something else, that explains an outcome or an intention, you really can't trust it, because it's based upon somebody else's knowledge that's probably been gone through several different people and their perceptions. So that's why you have to be the one to experience everything firsthand with a very basic platform to work from. So, we're talking the same language. Life and death, there's meaning to that. Not the politics around life and death, but actual, what is life and what is death? Okay? And then what are cells and what is this? And that's where the science world comes in, because academia has already established the basic foundation. The explanation around all of that is all political. And that's where people need to understand that that's where their belief systems come from, is through somebody else's perception of the laws. But there are laws. There's a life law and there's a death law. You can't argue that. But you have a choice. You can have indefinite death if you want. You can have indefinite life if you want. It's all about the chemistry that you play with. The right type of chemistry. Based upon your intention. If you intend to die, then it doesn't matter what you do. Play with the system. But if you tend to live, then there's a specific formula that needs to be explored. Wow. So I got to work on that analogy about volcanoes or the coal mine, because that makes sense. You take a pristine society that has no cancer, disease, and chronic illness, and that one person that goes off and plays with some negative elements, then they get sick, and then they're infectious or contagious. They bring it back to their society. Everybody will get sick, no matter how strong. Well, they all have a strong body because they all have the best nutrients, because they know jelly juice and they're doing the diet, right? Let's pretend that we do have a society that we're all 100% well. We all reverse all of our cancer, disease, and chronic illness. And then we're just hanging out, doing our thing, and then somebody decides to leave our society for a minute. They're still doing the jelly juice, but they end up hanging out somewhere where there is a pathogen or negative element that really, really overwhelmed their body. And then the body has an immune response and it's trying to purge it out and repair itself. Well, that person is contagious, and then instead of healing where they were, no, they go back into that pristine society, bring that pathogen in that society. Everyone's 100% well. Well, now they get sick because they got introduced to a pathogen their body didn't recognize, but they still practice jelly juice, they still do the diet, they're still doing wonderful. They all heal, and then guess what? That pathogen is gone because it's now an antibody that's kept at bay through their nutrition, their practices. The antibody didn't disappear. But then they say, nobody leave that society anymore. Do not go to that part of the realm where there's all these negative elements. Stay in our society. So nobody leaves, nobody dies, nobody has anything negative. The atmosphere is staying stable. That's indefinite life. And then that's where I bring in the 4 seasons right now. So yeah, with all of these chemtrails, right, which we get, people say, oh yeah, they're killing us. No, they're upsetting the homeostasis of the environment. The seasons become more extreme. Anytime you have a fluctuation in the atmosphere, you're going to have the 4 seasons. That's like the life and death process, but not indefinite death, because what happens is that we have parts of our world that's full of life that offsets it. But with death, when it comes to nature, right now we're in the middle of winter. That's the death process. Things start hibernating. And then it stays like that. And then spring, when the sun comes out and there's no more of that upset of homeostasis with all these different elements, then the sun comes out, it gets warmer, plants start growing, rabbits start humping and having babies and all of that. And then it goes into summer where it's continuous life. And then it's fall. That's the degradation. And that's what's going on in humanity, is that we have life of summer, then we have fall, and then we have winter, and then we have spring. But that's the same. So, but is there a perfect recipe for indefinite life on Earth? Of course there is. We can create the same atmosphere if we played, but it all depends on the sun, because the sun is a force that the elements play off of. So as long as you bring in all the elements together and you figure out, as the sun goes around, or the sun goes this way relative to your belief system, flat Earth versus the globe, okay, it's still predicated on the sun. The sun is that force that then determines how these elements get affected and play out. And then that determines how it impacts the Earth. Okay, I see you, Sugar. Sugar, it's snowy outside. You're not going to want to be out there, but she's so programmed. I've had her programmed like crazy. Okay, so there is a formula to perfection with the atmosphere in science and with our bodies. And then with Jilly Juice is knowing how to keep our internal universe completely well balanced no matter what type of fluctuations, no matter what type of pathogens we get introduced to, we can still survive. Okay? So this is huge. This is huge. And this is going to really blow your mind once you start this process. So jillyjuice.com. I'm gonna let her out. Hold on. Hold on. So I guess she has to poop. So I'm gonna have to get off here again to let her back in. But yeah, there is a perfect formula. When you understand chemistry and you understand all the different elements that are involved and you understand what kept us alive this long, what has kept Hawaii alive that long, and then what upsets homeostasis and causes death, we can have a utopian society as long as we understand chemistry. If you don't understand chemistry and you're, and don't understand where there's activity on Earth, like where the volcanoes are, because when you're in a volcanic country, you don't know when that eruption is going to explode and put negative elements in the air to then in turn impact your environment. That's no different than when you take in a vaccine. It's no different than when a volcano explodes. It impacts everything. And then every single living organism takes in that upset of homeostasis and they mutate and then they reach homeostasis again. And they may reach homeostasis, but will they stay mutated or will they correct that mutation from that initial impact? Now, we hope that the volcanoes are not going to keep erupting, because if that happens and you're constantly under attack, then you need to bring in the right elements to then counter that constant attack from that volcano constantly erupting. And that's the same thing in our society. When you have cars constantly going by and you have industry constantly going and doing their thing, then you got to go in and counter those negative elements to keep your internal universe well balanced if your environment is not going to sustain the well balanced. So it's all about balance and understand the laws of everything. And if you don't know the laws, you'll believe all the stories. And that's what it comes down to. Okay. You guys have a good one. I'm going to go do my thing. And yeah, just have a good weekend. Stay warm and no fear. And it's all about pro-life, at least in humanity and as well as in animals. But it is very political with animals, even with humans too. But start out somewhere small, because I don't know exactly what causes humans to eat animals, and it could be the parasites. That could potentially be what causes humans to eat animals or eat meat in general. That's the only thing I could think of why we, because I've noticed that my gravitation towards meat has diminished ever since I started doing the protocol, but I still do eat chicken. Okay. So does that mean I have parasites? It might. Do I have as many as I did 2 years ago? Absolutely not. Okay. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one. Bye.